Hey everyone, it's Crafty Sue. How y'all been doing? I've been still creating, and I came up with something new I woke up one morning with, and at first I thought it wasn't really a beginner's kind of project, but it actually can be, because it's not really difficult. There's some steps to it, but it's not very difficult. I mean, you don't have to worry about pinning patterns and this and that. All you need to know is how to sew a straight line, really. So about a few years ago, I started to make my daughter quilt for the first time. Why she likes the New England sports teams, I have no idea because we're not from there. And so I began making this for her. And here's her Patriots, her team, she loves them. And then I made this part of it. And you see, it's just straight lines. So if you're a beginner, you can do this. It's not, no, the only difference is with mine is I do have an embroidery machine, so I put Patriots rule on it for her. This is the center block, and the back is going to have this. And now I've changed the design on myself. But do you know why I stopped on this quilt? I wanted to give it to her like 3 years ago. And when I first started, and I've sewn my whole life long, but when it came down to cutting out about 80 of these blocks by hand, I said, I'll finish it sometime. And I feel bad because she loves the team. And she would use this. This is something that I could actually make for her, and she'd actually use it. So I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and this is what gave me this idea, by the way. And we were talking, and she does quilting. And I thought, well, yeah, I started a quilt for my daughter, but I didn't finish it because I didn't like the time frame. It was like time consuming. You had to, pick out colors and match and this and that. Well, with red, white, and blue, it's easy. But she said, well, have you heard about that new gadget called the Accu Quilt? And I said, no, actually I haven't. And I thought, Accu Quilt, Accu Quilt. Well, it's something to do with quilting. And she said, yeah, and she described what it could do. And she said, well, there's one that's electric. She said, but it's more expensive. She said, but then there's one you can just crank it and do it by hand. And I thought, really? So while I'm talking to her on the phone, I'm looking it up online. And I saw this gadget, and I looked at it, and I thought, I could finally finish my daughter's quilt and not be so stressed over time frame of having to cut out 50,000 squares, because this gadget, it can cut 6 layers of fabric at one time, as long as it's not like down or something. But it'll cut 6 layers of cotton fabric at one time. So instead of cutting 6 times, I'm doing boom, 1. And you're not. I gotta show you this up. So I got it. It's called Gomi. And it cuts out your quilt time a lot. This is the Gomi. That's the box that it came in. Now the basic package is very affordable. Wasn't really in my budget, but I need to finish my daughter's quilt. So I got the Gomi to finish my daughter's quilt. But then I got an idea for you guys. And I thought, you don't have to use scissors. You just use this cutting tool, and then you put it together. You make up your own design. So I have, and you will too, eventually, if you don't already. If you sew a lot, or you sew enough that you end up with a bunch of scraps, you end up with one of these. This is from the Satin projects that I do. I've got tons of pieces of satin. And I thought to myself, I do not like to throw away fabric. I don't. If I can give it to someone that's making crafts or something, I'll give it away. But I will not throw away fabric. I'll keep it and then try to figure out something to do with it, whether it's making little angels for the Christmas tree or something. But I don't throw away fabric. It's just, to me, it's almost as precious and priceless as my sewing machines. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate this, but I'm also going to show you what you get. I can't remember which of the die cuts actually come with the basic package. I can tell you, I ended up getting two extra ones, two extra items to use with it, just so that I wouldn't, because when I get into production mode, I don't know about all of you, but when I get into production mode, I don't want to stop. I want to be able to just roll with it. Just keep on, keep going. And this allows me to do that very easily. So this is the Go Me. Best thing since sliced bread in my book, at least right now. So it opens up just like that. It has a nice flat bed there. Goes like that. That's the handles there. And the way you get the die cut through it is you crank the handle. You only have to crank it maybe, I want to say 6 times to get, well, the long one takes a little bit, but if you want to tackle a quilt and you really dread the idea of cutting it all out by hand, get one of these. You'll love it, and you'll find excuses to use it, because now I'm in trouble. But it comes with some really great stuff. It comes with each one of the die cuts. They look like this. I mean, this is this, this particular one will cut 4 triangles. And the neat thing about the die cuts on these, for you ladies who do quilting, you know about the 1/4 inch seam? Well, this one has the 1/4 inch incorporated into the die cut. So it's that 1/4 inch, it's already cut out, so you have crisp corners when you put them together. Makes it so much more professional looking. Well, what I'm doing with this isn't quite professional looking, but I aimed it for you ladies and guys that want to do something different, creative. Christmas is coming, right? What are you going to do? I always give homemade gifts. I'm going to peruse some towels, and I'm going to do some monogramming. But this is something that I'm thinking about making as a gift. I just haven't figured out who I want to give it to. But so it comes with, this is the die cut, and for the die cut, when you go to use it, you put the fabric piece over top, so that covers all of this dark black area in the center. That's where it gets cut. And before you put it in the machine, you put a, it's like a self-healing mat on top of the fabric. So what happens is, as you crank it through, the die cut is pushed up into this and hits the self-healing mat. And when it comes all the way through, and it's, I hope you can hear the noise it makes, because it sounds so funny, kind of like a crinkle noise. But as it cuts it, you hear it. And once it's done, you take this off, and then your pieces are cut. And I'm going to do one for you. It comes with, this is the square version. Because of the designs that I typically would make, and in my daughter's quilt it's obvious, squares. Yeah, I'm going to do triangles too for it. One of the motifs, I guess is what you call it, is going to be a little bit different. So I want to break it up but have the same fabrics. And so I know I'm going to need to have rectangular sections, 2x4 or 2x4 inch. And this one, as long as it has 2 die cuts in it, so I could literally cut 12 rectangular pieces of material for a quilt instead of cutting them one at a time or 2 at a time. I can do 12. Can you imagine how fast you could get a quilt done by doing 12 at a time? Oh, I love it. So after I cut them, what I did was, for organizational purposes, I put I just call them small, medium, and large. But anyway, the small triangle pieces, the one that cuts 4, and then the medium, which is the larger one, and I put it in a bag and marked it medium. Just took a Sharpie, Ziploc sandwich bag, and then squares and rectangles in here. Now my daughter's quilt, I actually had made a pattern for, as far as I made the design on a piece of graph paper, and I went red, blue, gray, red, blue, and arranged it. It's a 9-patch design basically. So what you do, and as I was saying, I'm going to use this one. Now, I have, like I said, satin everywhere. If you have a fabric that frays, and this frays like nuts, use the pinking shears and cut it to kind of like fit on top of there. The other day I was working with the satin, and I hadn't done the pinking shears on the pieces I was working at, and it like wants to cling to you like glue, and it would get on my nose, and I'm like itching, and it's annoying. But so don't do that. Don't do what I did. I wasn't thinking. I was trying to be, in a hurry. So you put your fabric on your die cut, and then you take the self-healing pressure. I call it a pressure mat. I don't know exactly what it's called. And you put it on top. Now I'm going to turn this around so you can watch it go inside it. Okay? So you're going to push in until it kind of stops. And you'll see the handle start to lift up. Well, that's your cue to start rolling it through. And you just do it real nice and easy. Hear that noise? No. It's like crackle. And then it pops up to the side. So then you take it from the other side. Okay. See? I'm already itching because that one's got a frayed edge. I'm going to fold this up for now to show you, and some other things that come with it. And you remove that. And this has the two larger triangles that it cuts out. So when you lift this up, you can remove two. There's the edge piece. You don't even need to throw that away because I'm going to show you I'm going to tell you what you can do with those pieces, okay? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 triangles in what? 10 seconds? I can't cut that fast. Not by hand. I can't cut 8 of these in 10 seconds. Can you? If you can, I want to see it. I want to see a video of you doing it. But anyway, these are the big triangles. And what I'm doing is, through my scraps, when you get, I'm not going to get ridiculous, okay? When I have little tiny things like this, yeah, I'm not going to keep those. There's not really anything to do it unless I really want to go and do something with fabric stiffener. That's another crafty thing I'll have to tell you about. I made a wallpaper border with fabric and fabric stiffener, and it was wonderful. It really did. It really finished off the room. Back there. So then you have these. I believe the machine comes with two die cuts, and it also comes with pattern ideas. Where are those again? And it's really neat because with each die cut inside the package with this is one of these. There's a design, and it tells you how to do a quilt. So you could literally do 4 of these, and that would be one motif. And then you just do as many motifs as the size as you need. And it's very plain English, so your beginners is perfect. It just tells you how to pin them. And I have a little friend to help with that, so you're not getting overwhelmed. And this could be, now I don't know if you ladies who do regular quilting have ever done this, but when I do my quilts now, I mean, not when I started that Patriots one, I didn't. And then I thought about some patterns that I had preserved for life, and so I said, you know what, I can do that with this. A lot easier. But anyway, so it also has the instructions on, how to use it, how you can go online and order more die cuts. They've got tons. They've got animals, plant, whatever you want to do as even appliques or whatever you craft that you have. They've got them. I mean, I looked on the website and I was like, oh, I'm going to be in trouble one day. But anyway, and then there's another one, and the other square die cut had this pattern, and this is the main book that shows you how to use it. And even the long one that had the 2 rectangular die cuts, it has a really neat pattern for a quilt on it. They give you ideas for the colors, But you know, you pick out the colors that make sense to you or that you like. But it's nice to have someone give you an idea of what you can do. And then if you actually go ahead and do it, then you're like, I want to make another one. And like, you'll get hooked. I'm hooked on this thing. It's making my life so much easier. They give you a pattern idea book. This is really cool. So you open it up, and they've got all kinds of neat little designs. You can see it. See? I mean, oh, I love this one. I love purples and blues. Where you got like the jewel tones. You can do any jewel tones in this design. It's really awesome. After I finish doing my daughter's quilt, I got to make for myself one. I'm going to make a St. Patrick's Day one. I've got all kinds of green material. And those Irish people, you know. But this is beautiful. I mean, you can do lap quilts for seniors in nursing homes. Those are really great gifts for Christmas time. It doesn't take a lot of fabric up. Now, when I was talking about a shortcut or something to make it even more fun, and what I did, well, I used to have a pattern, a clothing pattern. That was my favorite. And it started getting a little raggedy, and I was getting upset because I didn't want to buy another one, because after a while you can't find that same pattern anymore. And you ladies have figured that out, I'm sure. You end up going on eBay and looking for vintage patterns because the style that you want isn't made anymore. And someone's got to have it in their closet or in their sewing room. So, this is going to be your new best friend, ladies. This, for what we're doing, and I've decided with my leftover satin that I'm going to make a Asian satin pillowcase, confetti. A confetti Asian pillowcase out of satin. I already started it because I didn't want to, it's going to, you know, you guys wouldn't want to sit here with me for 4 hours while I'm cutting all that stuff out. So this is what you need. I would not necessarily, if you're trying to preserve a sewing pattern for clothes, I wouldn't necessarily use this for it, because this interfacing is fusible. One side feel, it's a cloth. It's a really lightweight cloth side, and it's the Helon Shape Flex SF101 woven fusible interfacing. Woven meaning it's cotton fibers that they've woven in a real thin, it's very thin, but on the other side is the glue. And so for all you beginners, when you're using fusible interfacing, you put the wrong side next to the glue side, and you put your iron on, you can put on medium heat, you can even put on steam, but you're just going to, what I typically do, especially if you're doing a lot of little pieces, is kind of like tap it to get them put in place and then smooth it out so that they stay. Now, the reason why I said that I do this way instead of normal quilting, young ladies, is you make a 1/4 inch seam. You connect your pieces with a 1/4 inch seam. And we're not going to do that. We're going to use a decorative stitch on top. That's when you find out whether or not you have the right sewing machine for something like this. And I will let you know that most of the machines that I gravitate towards, they're going to be vintage. The reason why being that, they're metal. They will last as long as you don't spray canned air in them. Yeah, don't do that. It'll make the inside rust. And then you'll be mad because now this machine that would have lasted past your time is no longer working. So you want the ideal. If you want to do this kind of thing on a regular basis, I mean, you can make purses. You can make patchwork purses, or just a hobo bag or tote bag, anything like that. Those are the real simple things for you gals and guys who are starting out fresh as straight up beginners. Straight lines. Well, you know, a tote bag is what? Square and a handle, or 2 handles, however you want to do it. It doesn't have to have a zipper in it. It doesn't have to have a flap on it. You put a flap on it if you want. But, so what I'm showing you today, you can do a ton with. You can make pillows, throw pillows this way. You can make quilts, like I said, tote bags and all that. And every single one will be different. But you know why? Because you came up with the color schemes for everything. I like the pale, soft colors for, say, a pillowcase, but something unique. Now, what I did after I cut my pieces out, first I went online and I found out the standard pillowcase size for a queen bed. I have a queen bed. So a standard pillowcase size for a queen bed pillow is finished size is 20 by 30 inches. So when you make your pillowcase, what you're going to do is you're going to cut it slightly larger because you need to have seams. And I'm going to show you how to do a French seam so that you don't have to worry about having to have a serger at all. Not too many people do French seams anymore, I've found out. I learned how to do them, I thought, boy, that's nice because you don't have anything fray, and it also gives strength to what you're making. And it gives it actually two seams holding everything together, not next to each other. One's on the inside, one's on the outside. I'll show you how that goes. But anyway, so the satin confetti pillowcase, or pillow, you would need 2 pieces of fabric, one being the fusible interfacing, 21 inches by 36. Then the solid satin, the backing of it, is 21 by 36 also. Okay. Since the finished size is 30, this gives you 6 inches to be able to make that hem on the edge of the pillowcase, and that's what makes it look really nice. I decided that on mine that I was going to have one side a solid, it's kind of like a seafoam green, I guess you'd call it, and the other is the pieced part. And that's where your fusible interfacing comes in. So, this is what I'm working on. And this is what you're going to make. You're going to make one, right? You're going to make me one? No, you don't make me one. Make one for yourself. Make one for your mom. Make one for Grandma. She'd love it. You know how grandmoms are in their satin pillowcases? You know, keeps their hair nice. It's to help keep your hair from drying out. That's why grandmoms always use satin pillowcases. Okay, so this is the beginnings. Now, you're going to look at this and go, especially you, listen, you quilting ladies, don't you get upset with me. Don't do it. There's a method to my madness. There always is. That's why I'm crazy crafty soup. But anyway, so I took the pieces. Like I said, I didn't start out with an actual pattern or design pattern, I guess I should say. I didn't actually start off with one. I'm going to move that a little bit. And the great thing about this fusible interfacing is it glues it to keep it where it is until you stitch it. And that way, if you find one that's one of them I found on there was kind of wrinkled, and I wanted to neaten it up, so I just peeled it up a little bit, moved it over, and in that way I could either take the iron and press it out down there again, or just pin it or whatever. The other thing is when you're using fusible interfacing with pieces like this, make sure that you don't have big gaps of the glue part sticking up. I have little gaps, but I cover those up with the stitches that I use. Okay? So this is what I have. Like I said, there's no rhyme or reason. It's just a lot of really pretty colors. I mean, look at that. Now, I do like to do an accenting. Every once in a while, I'll just take a little black square and stick it on the corner of one of these pink ones, and that'll do afterwards. If I want to. I may or may not. I really don't. I haven't made up my mind yet. It's kind of like a work in process. It's like as the creative ideas flow out, and then I either use it or don't. Okay. So what you, and like I said, I did where on one end I have one color for a band, so it doesn't matter which side I end up having as the hem part and which side is going to be sewn shut. Now with this, a lot of individuals, when they make a pillowcase, they don't want to have 3 seams. They just want to have 2 seams. So what they'll do is this being like this, it'll be twice as wide when they go to finish it, as far as sewing it, in order to turn it right side out and have the VA pillowcase. They'll fold it in half and only sew up 2 sides, and then do the hem at the one end. Not when you're doing a French seam, you don't have to do that. But I think you will agree with me on that a French seam is a really great way to finish something off. It really is. So I have ironed these all on. I'd like to know what you think of the colors. I honestly would. Now, I don't know what the quality of this picture is, but because I can't see what you see. But so what I did was I looked at the stitches on my sewing machine, and I needed a stitch that was going to be decorative and yet fill the little gap between the pieces on the interfacing. And now the tricky thing is, and you first timers, if you're going to do this one, make sure that, because there's sewing machines that are different in the type of presser feet they use. There's a high shank, a super high shank, which I actually happen to have one, and then there's the low shank. The major sewing machine companies typically are low shank. Every once in a while you come across one of these high guys, and I thought mine was just high, and it's super high. Well, what that means is the part that holds your fabric down, from that little screw that screws that presser foot in, from that screw to the top of the needle plate, it has to be a certain distance. And if it's under an inch, it's a low shank. If it's up to 1.25 inches, I believe, then it's a high shank. I have one that's 1.5 inches. That's a super high shank. And it was typically Kenmore. And Kenmores, I love them. And especially this one. And they had, the way you can tell the old vintage Kenmore super high shank is they made them with a black leg. The leg part that's attached to it, it's black. It's a black metal. It's really cool. But once you get these all glued on, and you've picked out what stitch you want to use on top of it that fills it, what you want to do, very first thing, what do you do when you start a project to avoid ever getting upset because the stitches just are not good? You do a test stitch piece with the same fabric you're going to use for your final project, and you're going to do that on a scrap of that. So I had somewhere I had done a scrap of this satin, and wouldn't you know, I cannot find it now. But anyway, I'm going to do another one. I thought I had it here. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna. I'm human. This may as well be live, right? Okay. Well, we're gonna do this now. What I decided to do, and this is where the type of machine you have is extremely important in this respect, is if you're going to, and what I did, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do it on this little piece of glue here. I'm going to put the machine up here in a second. I chose I call it the ladder stitch. I'm not exactly sure if that's what it's called. I just call them what I call them. When I was learning to sew, we just said, yeah, that one. And it's a zigzag stitch. And you use a double needle. The double needle zigzag stretch stitch for this, the ladder stitch as I call it, is perfect for it. Because you have 2 needles that are stitching in tandem across where the 2 pieces of fabric meet. So it fills in the gap, and it's pretty, and you can use 2 colors of thread at the same time. That's the best part. I couldn't decide if I wanted to do the green or the pink, so I did both. So I did one side green, one side pink, and it doesn't matter if I do it from the left or the right. I think it looks pretty good. But anyway, I did my test strip, and then this, of course, you're going to see all the little frayed parts, but Oh, let's see. Can you see? This is I call it the ladder stitch. It's almost solid. It's almost like a satin stitch. And for you newbies, a satin stitch is like what an embroidery machine does. There's no gaps between the stitches. You can't see it. It's all like solid. That's a satin stitch. These have a little bit of a gap. It gives it more character. And it really looks nice, to tell you the truth. So I'm going to do what I did, trying to decide what kind of stitch to do on this pillowcase. And I said, well, I know I want to use the double needle because it's going to go back and forth, and it's going to fill in the gap, and you're not going to be able to see the little tiny bit of fusible interfacing that might be poking out because it'll be all covered up. So I'm going to move this machine over here. And this is my lovely can mower. This is a great model machine, by the way. It's a 385 series, and it's the Model 165 28,000. Now this is a quilting foot that's on here for you people who are beginning, and it looks like an advanced project, but it's really not. I mean, you measure a square, put the pieces on it, and fuse them on there, and sew it up. There's no, you don't have to make any darts, you don't have to do any stay stitching, none of that. And I know that sounds like Greek just to you new guys, but so on this one, I have the double needle here. I don't know if y'all can see it. Let's see if I can tilt this down a little bit. Bring it up a little. Okay, I don't know. What if I turn the light off so you can see it? Let's try that. I want you to see the double needle. Okay. And let's go this way. Alright. Well, anyway, it's a double needle. It has a blue rectangular part at the top that connects the two needles. Okay? And I will tell you one thing about these double needles. They are extremely, extremely sharp. So if you have to reach down in here to thread it, be very careful. I got stabbed twice today, and I was being careful. But yeah, you don't want to get stabbed by a sewing machine needle, especially not these guys. Now, I didn't know if they came in a heftier weight needle, but they do. They come in a 16. Typically, you'll find them in 11 or 14. Now, I'm talking probably Greek to some of you guys. Well, what that means is when you are sewing your fabric and you're starting out, you want to make note of, and you can ask them at the fabric store, what kind of needle do I need to sew this? If you pick a lightweight fabric and you buy too big of a needle, when you go to sew it, it's going to leave a big hole in it because it's separating the fiber so wide because the needle's so wide. So lightweight fabrics, a 9, 11, 12. Cottons, polycottons, all day long, satin even, 14 is fine. When you get into your lightweight denims and your heavyweight denims and leather and vinyl, that's when you go to the 16 needle and the 18 needle. So the way I used to remember it was lightweight fabric, less number. So it's going to be a lower number. Lightweight fabric, lower number. Heavier fabric, higher number. So L and H. Make sense? Well, it did to me. Hopefully it makes sense to you. So I'm using satin, and I'm looking at my machine, and I've got stretch stitches and some kind of semi-embroidery type stitches on here. And I didn't really like those because they'd have like a diamond shape and then a little skinny line and a diamond shape. I said, no, that's not gonna, I want something consistent. So my mother used to call that, I believe, a smocking stitch. She used to do smocking. And that's where the little girls' dresses, they have the little elastic gathered diamond shapes where they still make them. They still make smocked little girls' outfit. So, and I just call it a ladder stitch. But there's two that would be appropriate. And one of them is a little wider than the other in the picture. Now, when you are using a double needle, the one thing you have to be attentive to is the distance that the needles have to go within that presser foot. This presser foot, it has a wide hole for the needles to go, but just like you're going to do a sample swatch of stitches that you want to make, try to get this thing out of here. You're going to do the same thing in a way with the needles in the presser foot. You're going to manually, with your hand, turn the wheel, the hand wheel, towards you and watch the needles. And if it slightly hits that inside of your presser foot, the stitch is too wide. You want to make it a little more narrow. When I first put this in, and I wanted my pattern to go across, but kind of in a wide pattern, and it's a good thing that I did it by hand. That I guided it by hand, because I would have broken not one needle but two. And I have done that in the past, not thinking, wait, I should have measured. You learn when you start doing things and you think, oh yeah, I got this. Yeah, well, there is an open toe foot, and I think I have one. When the open toe foot has a big opening in it, it's also used for quilting. And I think I can put my hands on one, hopefully. Yep. Yes, I did. Okay. Now, doing piecing type of work, don't get hung up on that you have to have a metal presser foot, because the clear plastic ones and the Teflon ones, well, Teflon aren't clear, but if you want to keep your seams straight, these quilting feet are meant for that. This one that I'm using to do this pillowcase, it has a lot of little red lines on it, and those are seam lines, hem lines, whatever you want to call them, so that if I stitch a seam with this red mark in the middle on it, and then I have to move it over to do a 1/4 inch out, like when you do the top stitching on a pair of jeans. It has the 2 rows of stitching. So then when I move that first row of stitching over, I'm going to move it to the next red line, so that the middle red line is going to be the exact same distance all the way down. And it looks so professional. And it's supposed to. I mean, that's what they make these for. Now the open toe foot, which is this little guy, it has, this particular one doesn't have, oh yes it does. It has indentations, it doesn't have actual red lines. There's different manufacturers make it differently. But I have seen one where on each long toe part, a red line, and then I've also seen a red line in the center. And that's the main one you line up, because that is the one that lines up with your needle. Now you're using a double needle, so you have to remember it's even distance on either side of that line as it goes across. Okay? So this one is fabulous for this kind of thing. If you're going to get into, even if you don't quilt anything, if you're going to do a piece like that and top stitch it, do something decorative, you have to have one of these. They're not that expensive. Not like some of the metal ones. Price some of the metal ones, especially for the super high shank. Oh my gosh. They're hard to find sometimes. At least the ones that I really was looking for. And when you put your presser foot back on, make sure you push it up all the way as you're tightening it back in. I've had this one wiggle off on me. That was embarrassing. So I'm going to do like this. Make sure your threads are pulled to the back. Whenever you remove your fabric from your sewing machine, never pull it forward. Do not do it. You can pull it sideways, to the right, to the left, and to the back. The reason why you don't want to do that, you don't want to pull it toward you, towards the front, and I know it's kind of like a natural thing to go, oh, I'll just grab it, is because over time, what will happen is, doing that enough times, your needle and your bobbin are going to forget how to find each other, and they're going to throw their timing off, and you're going to wonder, why did my sewing machine just stop making stitches and it just makes these big ugly rat's nest loops? That's why. That's one of the reasons why. And also, when you try to force the fabric through it, if you have a material and it starts to sew, and then it stop, bring the needle up, and if you can remember what size needle it is, if it's struggling, there's a couple of things you can do. You can lighten the, because it's probably the fabric. A couple of things. The fabric could be too thick, the needle could be too thin for the fabric, or there's too much pressure on the presser foot for that fabric. So there's different ways you can adjust it. That's why you do test stitches, because that way you can tell whether you need to adjust tension, whether you need to do another needle, whatever. Because you don't want to get into your real piece of clothing that you're making and then totally mess it up, because now you have to go back and get your seam ripper out and rip out these nasty loops and redo it again. There's nothing worse than having to start over again when you're almost done. And it's usually when my sewing machine decides to be mean to me. It's like, oh, you have only 12 more inches left? I messed your stitches up for you. Yeah, that's what happened to me. So anyway, there's the same weight fabric that I'm using, and I'm going to put it right here. Always, when you put your presser foot down, do not let it slam. Don't beat up your baby. It's trying to make stuff for you. Okay, now I'm standing, I'm not sitting, but I want you to be able to see the machine and the movement that it makes and why I chose this particular stitch. Now, we're going to pretend this is my stitch sample that I'm going to try, and we'll make sure that my needle doesn't hit the guide, the presser foot, plastic presser foot, and I want to make sure that it's going to not break my needles. Okay, so what you first do is you put it in and you turn the handle towards yourself. Watch it real close. This one it literally just barely comes to the side of the inside of the presser foot. That's okay. It's what you have to worry about is when it goes the other way, when it's doing the zigzag, because we don't know yet, even though the setting's set to where it should be small enough, we don't know that. So we want to do it at least 2 or 3 or 4 times. I usually do about 3 or 4. So that's one. You want to do a total of 3 full zigzags. Okay. So that's one. It goes to the left. Turn it by hand to the right. Let's see where the needles end up. Okay. Well, they didn't hit the plastic on the other side. But I'm going to 2 more times because I want to make sure. Because once this thing revs up, it could vary. So you want to make sure you still have clearance. And you don't want to start off too fast. For all you new guys starting out, do not have a heavy foot. It's not a Camaro. It's not a Mustang, and it's certainly not a Dodge Charger. Okay? Start out slow and work your way up. And your projects will come out perfect. Okay? So I'm going to go, and we're going to go this way. Now this one actually has a 3-step zigzag. So it goes left, middle, right, right, middle, left. And that's another thing you have to, depending on the design that you pick out, that's another thing you have to keep an eye out for. So let's do this one. And I think this one's pretty good. Yeah, I haven't hit the plastic on there. And I've done this 4 times now. Okay. Shall we let her do her thing? Hey, Lady Kenmore, do some showing off. Oh, gotta slow down. And I'm just guiding it through. Okay. Now, the deal with this one is, I started off with this separation width stitch with my sample piece that I can't find. So, I'm bringing up my presser foot, okay? We always, especially with a double needle, don't forget to lift the needles up all the way to the highest spot, or you'll break them just by not doing it. So, you're going to lift them all the way up, as high as they'll go, And the way you can tell is the arm is poked out the top here. See, that means it's the highest spot. That's when you kind of know when they sort of stop before they start to come back down. And then I'm going to pull that out so that you can see exactly what this just did. Now, when I did the hand is zigzagging, it didn't quite reach the edge. So these are kind of narrow, and I would like them to be a little bit wider. But you can always stitch, like do it once and then do it a second time if you want to really fill it in, but you don't necessarily have to. So that, let's see, trying to get this so you can see. 2 beautiful rows of stitches right there. I hope you can see that. Anyway, it's so then I think, well, maybe I should adjust the width a little bit. See if I can get these 2 rows to meet a little bit more in the center towards one another without breaking the needles. That's the tricky part. So on this, when you have a stretch stitch or a zigzag stitch is basically a zigzag, or a zigzag stitch is a stretch stitch. So I'm going to put this down this way, and I'm going to look at my settings. And on this machine, this is the design that you want, and the way you get it to be this design is you turn this wheel here, and I have it on the number 1. Yeah, number 1. Okay, so on this one you have the regular zigzag and then the stretch stitch. And I did the stretch stitch for another reason. Satin does stretch. It may seem like it doesn't, but it does. And sometimes it's annoying. And it can really get you frustrated. I know when I first started working with it on a regular basis, I'd go to cut it, lay it out, and then it would shimmy. That's why putting that satin on a fusible interfacing fabric like that is the best thing you can do. Because once it's glued, it's not going to stretch. And that's the best part about it. So I have a width on this that's at a 3. And I'm wondering, can I get it a little bit wider, like closer to a 4, where they kind of meet more together in the middle. So again, on the test stitches, you want to do that because you're going to hand turn it, and that way you're watching what you're doing and you're not hitting the pedal and you're not breaking a needle by going too fast. So let's adjust this one right here, and it was just barely a 3. I'm going to put it right at the 4. And again, I'm going to do this way so y'all can see. Okay, I put it to the left. Didn't hit the foot. That's a good sign. Keep turning it towards myself. And it's going to the right. Now the right side, if I look at it real close, it's pretty close. So I'm going to do it a couple more times. Turn it a couple more times. And I turn it from that. There. Still hasn't hit the foot. Move that to the right. Okay. Well, we might be in. Oh. Now, that's really close. So the next thing I wanted to, because remember I said this one kind of wiggles its way around, because when you get going fast sometimes, I need to put a new screw pin in there, where it won't do that. So I'm going to lift this up, just to double check it, make sure it's not wiggled itself loose. It's a very loose foot anyway, and it's under good. I'll put it down, and I'm going to cross my fingers, and I'm just going to lightly hit the pedal and watch what the needles do. And at the most, it's going to be a slow stitch to make sure that it doesn't break the needles, but that I still get the width that I want. So I'm going to try that. So let's see. Yeah. See, when you go a little slower, you run less of a risk of breaking your needles. There's more control that way. And I'm not pulling it, I'm just letting it do its thing. Okay? I like this one. So just before the 4 is like perfect. And I'll show you the difference. Lift it up. Make sure your needles all the way to the top. Even if you have to have them go down one more time. And pull it to the back. Ow! And you can see, hopefully, you can see really well on the back side too. Okay. Now, on the front, for both stitch widths, they come real close to each other in the middle. I'm going to have to put like photos of this on the page for you. And then on the back, same thing, but on the back, because that's the bobbin thread, it tends to be closer together. So if I could do that upside down, but I can't, like, yeah, no, I'd have to have it gridded all out on the back side. That would be really hard to do. Well, I am really happy with the second one. It's just a teensy bit wider, so it's going to cover the gap a little bit better. And test it out. I'm going to do it right on here on one of these little pieces. I'm actually going to go down this side of this. It's like an antique gold piece. Now, if it doesn't fill the gap all the way, and I can always just take one more row up there. It doesn't make it super rough doing that. And the other thing too is when you are sewing anything, make sure that the thread you use on top is the same thread you're using underneath. Same brand. Make sure polyester do not use cotton. It doesn't stand the test of time. So we're going to go this way and see what we get. Now when I'm doing this, I'm going to have to adjust because this gap has to line up with that red line in the middle of this foot, and that's why this presser foot is perfect for this. You can't mess it up if you keep your eye on where the gap is, where the two pieces of fabric meet, and where the needles are going. Okay? So, of course, I'm standing to the side, so it may be a little off. I'm going to try to straighten it up. So, a lot of times what I'll do is, since it's such a intricate stitch, is I'll take the presser foot up, lift the needles up just enough that I can reposition it just a hair, and then put it back down, and then put my needles down in that spot. So now I know it's in the right place. And then I just have to keep an eye on that red line and this gap here. So I'm just going to guide it through. And it slowly actually pulls it back together. It's kind of neat. And when I get to that seam down there, I'm going to stop right there with the needles up and just behind this line. Then I'm going to put the needles down, hit reverse for a couple stitches. That locks it in. I didn't lock in the beginning because I know that there are other rows of stitches that are going to go around it, and it will lock better. So I'm going to tip that up. Make sure I've got my needles all the way up. And then we're going to do a quick little front seam. We'll do that with the stitch sample. Oh, this turned out nice. Wait till you see this. I hope you can see it. I think I have to get a flashlight so you can see it. Because it turned out fabulous. It actually did exactly what I wanted to. See, because the satin does stretch just a teensy bit, this kind of stitch pulls those two raw edges just close enough together where you can't tell that they're not together. They're not sewn together. And oh, this is beautiful. Oh God, I love this. I hope you can see that you can see the stitches there. It drew the two fabrics together enough that you can't tell that they're just sitting there in glue. Of course, now it's double enforced with the stitching, and it reached across both and like I said, it closed in that little gap. That's what I was hoping for. I love it when things come together, don't you? Okay, last but not least, French seam. Oh, I meant to show you this. This is the back part of it. And actually, I could actually do a French seam on this. Yes, I know I should pin it. I usually do, but for time's sake, don't think I'm gonna. But anyway, so you have this piece. It's not going to hurt this piece to sew the back to it right now because I'm just doing the end seam as a French seam. Okay, and I actually didn't have this measured the last time I was trying to do this video, and I've had some internet issues. Yes, I'm going to pin it. Okay, anyway, it won't be that bad. You want to go right sides together. Whenever you are doing a finishing up portion, it is right sides together. So this is the wrong side, and that's the wrong side. Okay. And I have something over here. I should use the glass head ones, but I'm going to use whatever I can put my fingers on right now. So this will still allow me to sew the pieces, the little triangles and rectangles and all that, and without, making a mess of things. And it's kind of the reason why I wanted to show you, because that's important. And this. So what we're doing is this would be like a regular seam, but it's not exactly. And put them together like this. The main purpose of it is to hide and enclose this raw edge to where you can't see it on either side. That's the whole point of a French seam, is so you don't see the seam on either side. And it just looks like, how they put that together? It's kind of the magic trick. But yeah, this is, I don't see many items made this way anymore, and it's a shame because, like I said, it gives whatever you're making a lot more strength to it. And strength in a project gives it a lot more lifetime. This, yeah, I don't do every 2 inches on this, just on my bonnets, because they're cut in a circle, they will stretch. The circle stretches in a heartbeat in satin. So now I could change my presser foot, but it's not necessary. The reason why I'm not going to is I like the fact that this is nice and wide. It has the guidelines on it for seams, and I just don't like changing them if I don't have to. But this actually keeps a wider surface of the fabric in line and smooth as you stitch it. So now I have to find the straight stitch on this machine. Now I should take the double needle out, but I'm going to do an experiment. I'm either going to fly or I'm going to drown, and you're going to get to see me do it, right? So I'm going to leave the double needles in there, just because, and I'm using the width between the needles as the decision to how big of a seam to make. That's why I left them in there, because it's easier, because they stay in a consistent width the whole way. I don't have to guess. I don't have to look at the pins. I just watch the needles. And so I need a regular straight stitch. Now I used to get confused about this, and you guys that are new, it is confusing. When you do a straight stitch, the width is 0. It messed me up when I was like, what? It has width? No. A straight stitch has no width, but it has length. So if you give it a width, you're going to get a zigzag stitch. If you get a new sewing machine and you don't read the manual and you don't do the practice stitches and you don't put that 0 on there, you're going to have zigzag stitches all day long and you'll never get a straight stitch. 0, straight stitch. And then you do the length. The length is however big the stitch you want it to be. It took me forever as a young kid to figure that out. But anyway, so width, I have to set that to what? I have to set 0. Come here. Where are you at? 0. That is 0. Now, length. Now this goes a length up to, I think it's 5. No, 4. Yeah, they used it. The machines I used to use, you could go all the way up to 24 as far as a width. Now, the ironic part is, you'd think 24 would be a big stitch. 24, if you have a sewing machine, vintage ones or have this, most of them do. The older machines, like in the 60s and 70s, if it says a stitch width of 24, that means it's 24 stitches per inch. That means they're tiny. It's the opposite. Big number, little stitch. Little number, big stitch. So if you have to gather something, you want a, what kind of number? A low number. If you do put 24, there's no way you're going to gather that fabric. So remember, it's the opposite of the zigzag. Couldn't make it easier, could I? They had to give us a puzzle. That's okay. We will conquer it, and you will conquer it. And I want to see your stuff when you make it, Pete. Okay, so this one. Now, I could do a longer stitch, straight stitch, for the French seam, but I'm going to choose a middle length one for the mere fact that, for strength purposes, if I do a long stitch, it's gonna over time it will rip out, and you don't want that. Even with the 2 needles, it'll still rip out because the stitches are loose and long. Long stitches is for gathering. So instead of 4, and on this one it's a 4, I'm going to go to a 2.5. Yeah, 2.5. Now, I also have to change this dial that has, now I've got my width is 0, my length is where I want it, but I still have the zigzag design stitch on here. So if I were to stitch this right now, I would end up with a regular zigzag stitch. Because on this is color coded. Red means it was set on 0. And anything else is going to come up in the, I call it the tan color. And that's going to be, it's going to have a width. So you don't want that. So I have to turn the little knob here to number, if you list my straight stitch is 7. Well, 6, 7, and 8. 7 is the middle length. 6 is the smaller one. And then 8 is the wide one. As far as dialing it to the right design. So we got to find, I can't remember if I have to go backwards or forwards. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, that's 6. There's 7. This particular model is really easy to learn the differences in the stitch for that reason. Because when you take the one dial and you do stretch stitches SS, and if you turn that dial to SS, only the brown or tan designs are going to be available for you to use. Because it tells the machine, okay, we're going to do these stitches now. And those are the only ones that are going to show up until you take it off of the SS stretch stitch. So it's for those who are beginning, yes, it's a little more involved. But if you read the manual and you do your practice stitch, you'll get it. It's not no big deal. Okay, so I've got it pinned. I'm going to do this little French seam. And the reason why I talked about the needles, and plus this is also an inch wide. This presser foot is an inch wide front to back, and it's about 2 1/4 inches wide. So it's perfect to do something like this. Now, because I'm only doing the one end, I am not going to go all the way to the end. Because when I go to close in that, to do that seam, I'm definitely going to want to have it at a flap open, because you have to be able to tuck it in. If that makes sense. but we'll see when I do this. So I'm going to put my needles in. What I always do, or at least I try, before you start hitting that foot pedal, put the needle in the material to the lowest point, because now it's not going to slide out on you. If you go to bump the fabric, it's going to be secured. And I think I'm only going to go down like part of this. I may go down the whole thing. I don't know. We'll see. And so what I did was, with the lines, the grids on here, the edge that I actually did serge. Like I said, if you don't have a serger, pinking shears, especially for satin. And then that's why you do the French seam, because you don't have to worry about having to serge it. But I serge it because I'm still scratching my nose. So anyway, we're going to go down and keep the edge in line with the outside of this foot before the extension. This little nub thing, okay? So we're just going to go down this way. And it's just going to do straight. It's going to stitch straight. All the way down there. And I kind of went off my quilter there, but that's okay. That's because I'm standing up. But it's not bad. I mean, it could be worse. Okay? So I'm going to go all the way down here. Okay. Now, I'm not going to back up and lock the stitch in, because remember I said I have to do the other two sides. That's why. So I'm going to lift my heels up and pull the foot up, pull that out to the back. Now I can take the pins out at this point. Typically, especially if you're new at doing this kind of seam, after you take the pins out, press the seam out. For one main reason, it does give a crisper finish. And since this is a project, I'm not too concerned about that right now, just concerned that I'm teaching you how to do it. So you have this narrow seam, excuse me, and basically what you're doing is you're tucking in. You take this, and where the edge is, that's going to be concealed. So you fold it in like this. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. And then you just stitch across the top. So you have one line of stitching, just like you're doing a hem, but you're actually hiding the hem. Oh gosh, I just drew a blank, guys. It happened to my seam allowance. Got it. I figured it out. I remembered. Yeah, you're hiding the seam allowance inside the hem. And I don't know why they call it French hem. Maybe the French came up with it. I don't really know. But so if I would have pressed this, it would look much better. But so I'm gonna turn this way just a little bit, because I want a little bit more control. I don't want it to look so icky. But anyhow, so I have the champagne gold on this side, and I just realized I'm doing this right. The champagne gold is going to blend right in, because it's going to go on the top, and the green is going to be right next to it. So it's going to have a little touch of green on the gold side, and that's kind of, I don't know, I just kind of like that idea, and that's why I chose the double needles. So I'm going to do a little bit of it, and then I'm going to press it and do it the right way later on. But I want you guys to see exactly how this behaves. Now, I'm lining up the right needle literally with the edge. You'll see when I've got it. I'm going to try to show you. Because now I'm going to have a seam that's only a 1/4 inch wide. From the right needle to the left needle, the distance is 1/4 inch. And it's perfect if you're going to do jeans. You know, the goldenrod thread that you do the edges all with? You know, it'll look like they're store-bought. but you want to practice with that duckling. You really want to make sure that you're not going to break it. I broke 3 one day and I was so mad at myself. But anyway, I'm going to stitch down this just a little bit. Yes, I should have pressed it. I do apologize. But that's fine. There is a way to finger press. There's also a plastic tool for quilting that's used for turning corners, and you can use that to do it. You can take your fingernail after you press that and just kind of like literally kind of scrape on it, and what it does is it flattens out. It's called a finger press. So I'm going to, I started about 1 inch in from the end and put my needles in. And that way too I can see that the right needle is really literally on the edge, and that's the green thread. So I don't want to, I want it to be seen, but not, I don't want it to be seen. So anyway, I'm going to come down here probably about 6 inches to show you how it comes out. And I'm taking my time because I do not want to mess this edge up, because I didn't press it, and I knew that. Now remember, when I'm doing this, I had it right sides together first, did the same, wrong sides together, and then doing the tops French seam on the outside. Oh, that's so pretty! Oh my gosh! You're gonna love doing this way. Anyway, I'll finish it later. But I really do want to press it. I'm just trying to save some time because I get long-winded. I'm sorry. Okay, lift up the needle, lift up the presser foot, pull that out. Like that. Now, that is so, wow, that is really cool. That is really cool. It even gave a little bit of an edging to the other side of the gold. But if I'd pressed it, it wouldn't. But I kind of like it this way. So anyhow, when I did that with a double needle, now I don't know if you're listening and watching. Speed is not your friend with something like this. It teaches you how to have patience and also teaches you how to be accurate. And when you're starting out new sewing, you want to be accurate. Okay? But here is the section, and the right needle is literally, let's see, I don't know if you can see, hopefully, but it's literally right on the edge, and 1/4 inch in is the other thread. And then the other side, like I said, it comes out where, I don't know how I did that, that's right. But anyway, looks like a zigzag on the back side. So this is a tricky stitch. But with this, even when this is turned wrong side up, after it's all finished, and it's turned wrong side out, you do not have any fraying, no raw edges, nothing. This will last and last and last because you took the time to do a French seam. I'm so glad you tuned in, and I'm sorry that it took so long, but this was like the coolest thing I thought. And for new people, beginners, it's easy for a beginner. It's all straight lines, take your time, and it also helps you learn your machine. Your machine is your friend. It's the one that creates what you got up here, and you make a good team. I thank you, and like my page, share, comment. I would love to see some of the work that you guys do, or even if you have an idea and you want to see if I can do it. I like a challenge, remember? So you can give me all the challenges all you want all day long, and I will take them. But I hope that you stay tuned in, and I've got some more stuff coming up for you. For you new sewing people, I have a video coming up this week, and it's going to be how to read a pattern's hieroglyphics. That's what I thought when I first read a pattern, and I'm sure any one of you who is wanting to make your own clothes now, yeah, it can be confusing. And hopefully I can break through that for you. So, thank you so much for tuning in. And like, share, subscribe, and come see me again. And shoot me some pictures of some stuff. All right? All right. Well, this is Crafty Soup with So What. You have a blessed day. Okay.